Okay, in this next video, what we're going to learn about is the fact that we've already seen the equation of the circle can be written in a format where you get a bracket squared plus another bracket squared equals a radius squared. Okay, but sometimes the equation of the circle is not given in that format. If you imagine having a bracket squared plus another bracket squared, you could actually expand those brackets out. And if you expanded it out, it would look totally different. So sometimes you'll be given the equation of a circle in the expanded out form. Okay, so I'll give you an example of this. Here's an equation of a circle: x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 6y plus, well, I think I'll make it minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, that is an alternative version of the equation of a circle. Okay, now it doesn't look anything like the ones that we've dealt with so far. If I call this number 1, what I'm going to do is restructure this to make it look like one of the ones with bracket squareds in. And so I'm now going to show you how an equation like that, which is the equation of a circle, how we can restructure it and hence figure out what the centre and the radius of that circle is. Okay? And what you'll find is, I'm going to do this shortly, but what you'll find is an equation of a circle will always have x squared, y squared, some x's, some y's, a number, and then probably it'll equal 0. Sometimes that number might be on the other side, so you might get minus 6y equals 1 instead, but the principle is basically the same. You'll have x squared, y squared, x is y, and then perhaps that number on the other side. Okay? Let me show you how we do it. First of all, you gather the two x quantities together, so we get x squared plus 4x in that order. Plus, then you put the two y quantities in the next order, like so, plus y squared minus 6y. And what I'm going to do is take the minus 1 to the right hand side, equals 1, so we get that. Now, this next step involves the technique that I did a video on of revision called completing the square. What I'm going to do is take those two first terms there involving x and write it as a bracket squared using the completing the square technique. So those two quantities are the same as some bracket squared. Well, if it's x squared, it must be an x. Now, if you remember how a bracket squared works, it's x times something and then double it gives you 4x. So this number here needs to be simply half of that plus 4. It must be plus 2. Now, if you think about it, that as it stands is not identical to x squared plus 4x. Because if I expand that out at the side, square the first, you get x squared, multiply the two together, you get 2x, and double it, you get plus 4x. And then you square the second term, you get plus 4. So you can see this thing as it stands is x squared plus 4x plus 4. Well, I only want it to be x squared plus 4x, so it's plus 4 too much. So I'm going to subtract 4. Now that expression is identical to those two terms there. Okay, next I'm going to do the same principle for these two terms for the y's. So I'm going to say plus we've got a bracket squared. If it's y squared, it must be y. If it's minus 6y, halve it, you get minus 3. Halve the minus 6, you get minus 3. That must go in there. That bracket squared is not identical to those two terms. If you imagine expanding that out, square the first, you get y squared. Multiply the two together, you get minus 3y. Double it, you get minus 6y. Well, they're okay. That's what we've got. But you'll also get, if you remember, square the second term. Minus 3, when you square it, gives you plus 9. So that bracket squared is those three terms. I only want those two. So you have to get rid of the plus 9. So we subtract 9 to compensate. Now that is the same as that. So that's the same as that, that's the same as that, and we leave equals 1. Exactly the same, that doesn't change. Okay, now we just reorder things slightly. We put the bracket squared with x in first, plus we put the bracket with y squared in second, and we take all the numbers to the other side. So you get minus 4, minus 9, that's minus 13, take it to the other side, becomes plus 13, together with the plus 1 gives you plus 14, like so. Okay, and from this I can see I can now write down what the centre of this original starting circle is. The centre of this original circle is, well, if that's plus 2, it's going to be minus 2 comma, and if that's minus 3, it's going to be plus 3. If that is 14, then the radius is simply the square root of 14. The root of 14 won't simplify. You can try writing it as 4 times something, doesn't work. 9 times something, it doesn't work. So root 14 is the answer. So there you go. There's the equation of a circle given in its sort of expanded out format as opposed to having brackets. And we have then converted it into the bracket format, and by doing so we can work out the centre and the radius. This is a very popular exam style question where they give you something like that and ask you to work out what the centre and radius is. Quite often in the circle question it's part A of the exam question to do that process. Let's try number 2 then. Okay, so if I give you x squared plus y squared again minus 8x plus 2y minus 5 equals nothing, and I want to find out what the centre and the radius of that circle is, let's quickly restructure it. I put the x squared first, then I put the minus 8x, then I put the plus y squared, then I put the plus 2y, and then I take the minus 5 over to make it plus 5. So we get it in that order. I'm now going to take the first 2 terms and use completing the square technique. If that's x squared, that must be x. If it's minus 8x, it must be minus 4. I'm going to do this in my head. Square the first, you get x squared. Multiply the 2 together, you get minus 4x. Double it, you get minus 8x. But you also get plus 16 from the second term squared. So to compensate, you take away 16. So that expression is the same as that now. Plus a bracket squared for the y terms. If it's y squared, it must be y. If it's plus 2y, it must be plus 1, half of the plus 2. But that is not the same as just those 2 terms, because square the first, you get y squared, multiply the 2 together and double, you get plus 2y, but you also get plus 1 squared, which is plus 1. So you need to take away that 1 to compensate. That is now the same as y squared plus 2y. Okay, you've still got it equal to 5 on the right hand side. Let's just restructure. So you get x minus 4 squared plus, put the bracket, y plus 1 squared next, and take the numbers to the other side. Minus 16 minus 1, that's minus 17. Take it to the other side, becomes plus 17. Together with the 5, you get plus 22. So I can immediately write down now that the centre of this circle, given as question 2, will be, if that's minus 4, 4. If that's plus 1, minus 1. And the radius of the circle is simply the square root of 22, which is once again not a nice number, so leave it as a surd, and that surd won't simplify once again. There you go, there's 2 examples. Now this is just really a case of practice, that's all it is. And they usually give you very nice circle equations which are very easy to use completing the square with. Some of the completing the square questions we did way back in October time sometime were actually quite awkward. Most of the circle ones that you get are very straightforward. So I'll just practice 1 or 2 more just to give you some examples in your notes before you actually tackle some questions. So if I get rid of these, okay, number 3, here we go, x squared plus y squared minus 10x plus 4y minus, I'll make it plus 1 equals nothing, like so. That's usually the sort of format we put it in. Okay, here we go. Here's the radius and the centre of this circle. Here we go. X squared minus 10x plus y squared plus 4y equals, take the 1 over, minus 1. Complete the square. Bracket squared. If it's minus 10x, it will be minus 5. Plus y in a bracket squared. If it's plus 4y, plus 2. Okay? Equals minus 1. Now, I haven't forgotten, I need to do some compensation here. So if I just make a bit of space, and I need to do some compensation there. So, square the first, x squared, multiply the two together and double, you get minus 10x, but I also get minus 5 squared, which is plus 25. I need to compensate by putting minus 25 in there. So that's the same as that. Square the first, y squared, multiply the two together and double, plus 4y. But I also get plus 4 from that. Don't want it there, so subtract 4, like so. Okay, restructure. X minus 5 in a bracket squared, plus y plus 2 in a bracket squared. Minus 25 minus 4 is minus 29. Take it to the other side, becomes plus 29. Together with minus 1 is plus 28. Okay, so centre of this particular circle, minus 5 there, plus 5. Plus 2 there, minus 2. And the radius is the root of 28. Now that's not a nice whole number, but it is a surd this time that will simplify. You should know that root 28 is the root of 4 7s, which in turn is root 4 root 7. So the radius would be written as 2 root 7 in that situation. Okay, I'll do one more. Let's try this one, a bit more practice. X squared plus y squared minus 6x plus 10y. Let me make a bit of space here. Get rid of that. Minus 3 equals nothing. Okay, this is the last one I'm going to do on this video. Notice that I've kept using even numbers for these x and y values, which then makes the completing the square very easy to do without creating fractions. And that's what you'll basically find on the circle questions. They're not really testing completing the square, they're testing your knowledge about circles. So even though you're using completing the square, they give you easy figures to use, because it's really circles they're testing, not completing the square. Anyhow, here we go. X squared minus 6x plus y squared plus 10y equals, take the 3 to the other side. Okay, let's complete the square on these two. X minus 3 in a bracket squared. The minus 3 squared gives you an extra plus 9 for what we want. We don't want that there, so take away 9. Plus a bracket squared. If that's y squared, it must be y. If it's plus 10y, it must be plus 5. Okay, square the first, y squared, multiply the two together and double, you get plus 10y. But we also get plus 5 squared, which is plus 25. I don't want it. So compensate, take away 25. Equals 3, 3. Reorder, x minus 3 in a bracket squared, plus y plus 5 in a bracket squared. Minus 9 minus 25 is minus 34. Take it over, you get positive 34. Together with the positive 3, you get positive 37. Okay, so I can see now that the centre of this particular circle, if that's minus 3, it'll be 3 comma plus 5 minus 5. And then if that is 37, the radius is the surd root 37, which obviously doesn't simplify. Okay, there you go. You got 4 examples taking an equation such as that and rewriting it such that you can work out the centre and the radius from that equation. Okay, that's the end of this video.